All right. Hello, everybody. Again, thanks for coming back to watch some more. I know the last video I did, a lot of people said there was a problem with volume. And I don't know. I looked at my volume settings, my sound settings, and I don't know what it could be. It could be the fact that I hit my laptop on the ground a little too hard when I was angrily scrambling to pack all of my stuff up in the hotel in a different state where I don't live. The first time the covert narcissist discarded me. So that could be, I could have just messed up my laptop. So I'll just try to talk a little louder, and I hope this one is better. So this morning, actually, I did one of these super fun wake up at 4 a.m. things. Maybe still some CPTSD related deal. And I couldn't fall back asleep. And so actually someone posted on my channel that I should check out the channel called My Narcissistic Healing. And the woman who does that channel, her name is Sade Brown. It's so awesome. It's so interesting. She apparently was diagnosed as a covert narcissist and is trying to recover and sort of change her patterns and be really conscious of everything that she's doing. So at 4 a.m., after I tried to go back to sleep for a while, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to check out this channel. And it was so interesting, and it helped me connect a lot more dots between these things that were still floating around in my head and maybe keeping me up until 4 a.m. About the covert narcissist, because there were a lot of things that had happened where it just seemed like maybe she's socially awkward, maybe she just doesn't think a lot before she says things. But now, I don't know. Now it seems to even fit better with my understanding of what covert narcissists do. And it seems that it could have been a lot more intentional than I was thinking of it at the time, which is kind of comforting and kind of horrifying. But anyway, here's what I got from watching this super interesting channel. So one of the things in the final, multiple different discards, right? And then a hoover and then a discard. In pretty much every discard, what I got told by the covert narcissist was, I just can't fight for this anymore. And I was always like, dude, screw you. I'm the one who's been fighting tooth and nail to keep this going and shoving down my emotions so that I don't set you off. You all know how this goes. But then when I was watching this channel, Sade said that covert narcissists discard you when they're tired of pretending to be someone they're not. Okay, I know this maybe seems like really basic, but I always thought of it more like, she was tired of me because I wasn't giving her that supply anymore, because instead I had started calling her out on things, which I think is partially true. But also, in the final discard, the final time I saw her, I kind of discarded her the last time. The final time I saw her, the conversation was about how when she was away for 3 weeks, she had only called me when I requested it. And I wasn't even acting mad about it. It just like somehow came up, right? And she was trying to take credit for having put in so much work, into this relationship to like stay in touch and whatever. And I was like, I've seen you talk to so many other people, like pretty much constantly all the time. And so it was a little bit difficult. I felt a little disconnected from you, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't handle that critique. And so was like, I can't fight for this anymore. So yeah, when they're tired of pretending to care about you, basically, I guess. So yeah, that was just a way that I hadn't quite thought of it before. So thank you, Sade. Maybe she did feel like she was fighting in a way. Another thing that we all know is, of course, that narcissists of any kind don't have empathy, just kind of don't know how to do it. But again, hearing Sade talk about it and actually ask her possibly codependent viewers, like, how do you do that? How do you put yourself in someone else's shoes? Was so interesting to see and hear. And then she also said it's hard to empathize sometimes because they compare their sadness to ours. So this made me think about when my covert narcissist had, multiple topics that I wasn't allowed to talk about. I know you know how that goes too. But one of them like I've mentioned before, was I wasn't allowed to be like frustrated with my job and talk about it like a normal person. Um, and she always called it a trigger, which made me so angry because the trigger for her supposedly was that her ex had a hard time at her job, and then their relationship got miserable because, supposedly, because this person was, miserable at her job and needed to make some changes that just weren't happening. But maybe if what's actually happening is the comparison of her sadness to mine, maybe it really kind of is the inability to stand with someone in their sadness and still be okay. Like, to me, it always felt like she was fighting to just stay above water, to not get to her suicidal place that she had very openly told me about. That happened a lot. So that was just another really interesting thing to hear, the comparing sadness. It was kind of like, oh my gosh, maybe that's also why she would like force my perspectives to change about pretty much anything that I said was frustrating or difficult or sad, or if I was angry, anything, she would need to spin it. And I always thought it was because of AA. Like, I don't know, maybe it seemed like she would need to convince her own self to stay really, really positive so that she wouldn't want to drink. And so, yeah, that was just interesting. So thank you again, Sade. She also, my covert narcissist, used to say all the time, your feelings aren't my problem. And again, I thought that was an AA thing. More sort of maybe not trying to sound quite so harsh, but more along the lines of like, what is the saying? Like, keep your stuff on your side or keep your side of the street clean, right? So like, what I'm feeling is my problem, and I can't control anyone else's feelings, and that's fine, that makes sense. But when she said it, it definitely felt like, you're not my problem. Like, even if I make you feel bad, she would try to convince me no one makes anyone feel anyway, right? Because that's so convenient for her to use in an argument. You can definitely make people feel a certain way, right? Or we wouldn't have a label for emotional abuse, So it turns out that really that's flat out how she feels, right? No one else's feelings are her problem. They're not her concern at all. And along those lines, she used to say, like, when she flew to California to see her ex, and, she got really mad when I, again, mentioned that, like, I needed to be in touch with her more because I felt distant or insecure or whatever. Then she would always say, well, we're fine and you should just know that. Or, when you don't hear from me, that doesn't mean that I feel any differently about you. And I believe that now. You don't feel any differently when you're not talking to me, or when you've been out, in Hawaii on vacation for 3 weeks and hardly talk to me. You don't feel any differently. You want me to think you love me just as much. But now I understand so much better that you never really love me at all. You don't care at all. So you do feel the same, and you don't understand why I would think anything was different. Maybe your pretending got a little worse, but you don't feel differently. So that helped to think about that. And I also just remembered a super narcissistic, like one of the most narcissistic things I can think of that someone could say in the very beginning of the relationship. I don't know why I didn't catch this better. She said, people tend to fall in love with me, but I don't really fall in love with people. Yep. I mean, I guess that goes along with if you don't really know how to connect with someone in all of these really important ways, then you're not going to feel like you love them. You're just going to keep using them. And that's, again, it was so useful to hear Sade talking about the ways that she like consciously uses people for supply. And I don't know how conscious it is, of course, for various different narcissists, but it was just so interesting that she was kind of conscious of the fact that people seem to get really into her. She knows she can rope them right in, but she doesn't really ever feel it. But I mean, of course, she tried to convince me, like, but you're the only one. Yeah, okay, yeah. Also, Sade talked about hating getting any advice, but of course wanting to give it all the time, right, and have people follow her advice. And that, of course, is just like my covert narcissist, um, you know, like I've said, I was just never allowed to say what I really thought, basically, about any situation that she was in, which made it impossible for us to talk about anything that was going on in her life, which of course made me feel even more distant from her. I remember one time we were talking about, she wanted to try to talk about what she was going to do next in her job, because at the time, you know, she had all these big ideas that are never going to happen about how she was going to go back to school or which career she was going to pick, blah, blah, blah. And she was asking me for advice, basically, or that's how it came across. And so I started talking about things from my perspective, which was like thinking about what's going to go on your resume or something like that. That was like the route that I was taking, like what's going to lead you to where. And she lost it and got so angry and did the classic so many times I heard, "You're making it about you," just because I said something from my perspective. So again, I guess this goes back to like not knowing how to step into my shoes, not understanding that, like I had to say to her once, you know, my perspective is all I have to go on. Of course, that's all anyone has is their own, right? And then we try to understand other people's, but I don't know yours yet in this situation. So I'm giving my 2 cents as me, right? Makes sense to me, but it just really threw her off. And then she would always get mad because, like, she would say, well, you should know mine by now at certain points, or you should know you're not supposed to talk about that, or you should know what I think. And that would mean that I just wasn't allowed to challenge anything. Of course, you know this. So I think that kind of goes along with her. She would always complain that I wasn't giving her unconditional love. Like that was another huge triangulation thing, was she would say the ex that she was talking to all the time out in California would give her unconditional love, right? Because she had told the ex to try to make her mad. Same triangulation, I'm sure. Told the ex that she was sleeping with me, dating me. I don't know. I'm sure she lied and said that that ended at some point as well. But, you know, and the ex was still talking to her or like listening to her and, you know, just being there for her in this way that like I just couldn't, apparently, because she wouldn't let me. And so this wasn't unconditional love. And there was also a time when she was going to go out to California again and had wanted me to watch her dog, and then said, but I don't want you to think I'm using you. And I said, I wouldn't think that unless you're going to go out there and see your ex. Like, that is my line. That is my boundary. I'm not watching your dog while you visit your ex. And then she would fly off the handle and tell me about how all my love is conditional. And I mean, at this point, I've even read, I forget where it was, but like something from the psychology community that was like, unconditional love is for newborns, basically, up until maybe you're like a toddler. And that's when you start learning, like, you don't get to hit people. That's a boundary, right? In a way, right? That's kind of when it stops being like, do whatever you want to me or act however you want. So I was just like blown away by her concept of like, you should give unconditional love. But of course, that's what you have to give. It won't work, right? But like, if you're even trying to be with a narcissist of any kind, you can't put out any boundaries. You can't hold them to any standards. You can't provide any criticisms, even very nicely, right? So it made me think about that more too. And then also hearing Sade on her channel flat out say that they get satisfaction from seeing you suffer. Again, I've read that so many times. I'm sure you all have read that so many times. But it's hearing someone say it and admit it that, like, I don't know, it changed the way I thought about it too. So it's just, you know, it's one of those things that it again makes me very glad that I got discarded by my overt narcissist. And then that of course things blew up with the covert one as well, because how could you ever be with someone long term who liked seeing you have a hard time, right? Like, your partner has to be there for you, has to be empathetic at the very least when you're having a hard time. And it made me think about something that made her so angry in the beginning. Like, she really did her research on me, like specifically asked me to open up about the former overt narcissist and about CPTSD, and she wanted to read articles on it, blah, blah, blah. I doubt she ever actually read those articles. I think she just wanted me to think that she was being a caring person. But she hated the part of my CPTSD where like she would start one of her fights about nothing. It would feel, of course, very similar to my overt narcissist. So I would shut down. I would, just do the thing where I'm expressionless in the middle of this fight because I can't. My armor is up, right? So I need to like step away and, take 5 minutes or something to kind of come out of my freeze mode. And she knew this, but it would make her so mad. She would yell at me, "You don't even care. Like, look at you sitting there and not even reacting," because she wanted to see me suffering. She wanted the tears or the yelling or something, and I would just freeze. So that made me think about that, because at the time I was like, how could you be angry at me for not showing how horribly I feel towards you right now? I don't know. It was just odd, but now that makes sense. You don't even care. And so there seems to be this balance, though, needed between like wanting to see someone suffer as long as they're not suffering so much that they stop being a good supply, right? So I think maybe that's kind of what happened with her ex, who was having a hard time at her job. Maybe she was having a hard enough time that she just kind of like didn't care anymore about the narcissist that I ended up with. And so wasn't good supply. And so they broke up. And then, of course, she got hoovered back in when she got a new job and was in a better place and like wanted to ask the narcissist for advice about the job, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of makes more sense now too. Another thing I started thinking about as well was when I discovered that she was, it's funny, I don't even want to call it emotionally cheating anymore because I don't really know that she's capable of it, of that strong of a connection, but she was at least talking to the ex in California constantly, okay? And when I found that out, of course I was devastated and I was like, don't talk to me at all until you're absolutely done talking to her. And I tried all of that stuff and she just wasn't having it. And I should have blocked her right then. But she would always say, "It's not what you think. It's not what you think." And I was like, what the hell else could it be? Like you have no boundaries with this person. You are clearly trying to make me feel bad by saying that like she's so much better at knowing you and supporting you and everything than I am. And it's horrible. I see it pop up on your phone in front of me all the time, which of course is on purpose, right? But now I understand that it wasn't what I thought it was either, right? Like it wasn't anything real because the only time she can allow herself to interact with someone is if they're completely positive, like this person was, because she had just gotten this new awesome coaching job. And she was giving a lot of supply and like admiration to my covert narcissist because it was a coaching job at the college where my narcissist had played water polo. So she was like asking a ton of advice specifically about the school, but also coaching advice from someone who obviously knew a ton about water polo. And that was like their secret little thing that I couldn't get in on because I don't know a goddamn thing about water polo. So really it was just I'm using her for supply. So it wasn't what I thought it was. She was right. And it was just so interesting too how at one point she told me, like, I know I have to cut her off. Her AA sponsor said something like, she's like a drug to you, which is so interesting too, right? You have to cut her off so that you can like actually be in Chicago instead of being like out in California, at least in your brain and whatever, needing that. And so how interesting, like she knew that she was using this person to try to feel okay in Chicago when she didn't have that type of interaction here because I already hated her. And she knew that she was going to block her. So again, completely incapable of empathy. I don't know what this person on the other end was feeling, but I'm sure it was something of a surprise if you suddenly get blocked, right? I have no idea how that conversation went. I don't know if it was a conversation. I don't know if she waited for her ex to like try to hold her accountable for something and then just say like, I can't do this anymore. Who knows? It's probably the same pattern. But yeah, she had to have been so conscious of using this person. Yeah, I don't know. And I know this, but watching this channel coming from a covert narcissist made me think a little differently about it. It made it more like real in a way. Also, in terms of wanting to see people suffer, Sade was talking about like if she feels like, manipulating someone to feel bad, to try to feel better about herself, she gave the example of meeting up with your friend, trying to look like a good person, meeting up with your friend who has just been broken up with by her boyfriend. So you take her out to dinner because you're the good person, right? And then you show her something that supposedly your boyfriend has bought you, right? To look like, oh, I have this thing that you don't have. And then you look at her face to see the disappointment. And it's not even real. She said, she just bought this thing for herself. But it's all constructed to make this person feel like the narcissist has this thing that you want. And just to see the look on their face makes them want to do this manipulation. So that made me think about so many things that happened with my covert narcissist that were along those lines. So while I was with her, I was living at home. I moved home after I did my master's, partly because I was doing an unpaid internship that I had to get done for the degree that I had. And also I was trying to help my parents out with some stuff. So I was living at home, which is quite difficult. I was in my childhood bedroom, which is just piled with shit. Some of my sister's old stuff that she doesn't have anywhere else to put. And then most of my stuff that was in the studio apartment where I was living before. So it doesn't feel good. It's not a relaxing space. And it's not going to get any better, until I move somewhere else. So she knew that. And at first had presented, her apartment, she gave me a drawer right away, and her apartment was like, oh, I want you to feel at home here because I know that where you live right now is pretty stressful. And my mom is really sick. So when I'm home, I have to be in the middle. It's very evident what's going on. I can't really escape in my brain like I used to be able to when I lived out of state. So it was a lot. And then of course she would yank that away, right? I started being invited over to her apartment less and less, or I would come over, or she would say I'm going to sleep over, that I could sleep over. And then she would start a fight and kick me out so that I would have to go back home. And then eventually I was I was hardly ever invited over in the end. So that was one thing that I know, she knew I didn't have it. She knew she had it. She could afford a studio. I'm never going to be able to afford to live by myself in Chicago. Cause I do nonprofit jobs generally. So, yeah, threw it in my face, offered it up and then yanked it away. She also, I was doing an unpaid internship. I was nannying a little bit on the side because I needed to spend some money on food and things. And so nannying, and that was hard for me because I've done that a lot, and it's been a fallback, and it's something I promised myself I would never do, especially after I got my master's degree. I thought I was done, but then I had to pick it up again. So I was feeling kind of bad about that. And then she would complain about the two different jobs that she had. I don't know which one to make into a full-time career. Oh, this is so hard. This one wants me to be a manager, and this one wants to create a position just for me. And it was I'm struggling to find one job that is fulfilling for me that even makes a part of what you're making at either one of those. So that was really rough. And then, I wasn't allowed again to talk about the frustrating parts of what I was going through with jobs. And then she would also, one day she made it very clear that something she had gotten in the mail was a $5,000 check from the stocks that she had through she used to work for Pandora, the music people. And they all got stocks for working there. $5,000 for doing nothing. And I'm sitting here I shouldn't ever go out to eat dinner, right? Because of my current financial situation. And you are telling me that you just got this check for not even working. And, I just what do you even say? And I'm sure my face was what the fuck? But I didn't say anything because then you get narcissistic rage. She also went and got this shiny new gym membership that I definitely can't afford at like a rock climbing gym. And that's fine, like great for you, but she kind of like put it in my face as this like really awesome new thing, and like also spent a ton less time with me so that she could go do that. She brought me there one time. Like, you can always buy a guest pass and it's not very expensive, and she has a bunch of money, but she only brought me there once for free because she got one free one. And after that, like, wouldn't. And then would weirdly suggest, like, oh, you should just get that gym membership. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You know I can't afford that. So now I just feel bad. Again, like, you have the thing. You know that I want the thing. No. She also, like, really threw me off with the way that she started talking about, like, the gym membership. And she started, like, eating healthy, and basically just was like trying to lose a bunch of weight, right? Because, you know, their image is everything, right? So, and started like working out twice a day. Like, she would run with her dog in the morning and go to the climbing gym at night. And I was like, she knows extensively. This is the problem. I shouldn't have told her. She knows extensively about my history of eating disorders. And it's not that bad. Like, it's not a thing now, really, but when you know that someone has that history, it would just be nice if you didn't talk about your body in a way that was like, this is disgusting, or I feel fat, or I need to put a shirt on so that I can try to eat dinner, or talking about how you need new pants because now they're all too big. Like, that's fine. I don't know, do your thing, but like, keep it to yourself. And so at one point I had just asked her, like, hey, if you're going to talk about all this, can you talk about like, the thing to focus on for a better body image is like what your body can do now, right? Like, oh, now you can climb, or now you can run further, or whatever. Can we talk about it that way instead of like how you used to feel disgusting, right? Because that makes people who've had eating disorders think about their own selves and how you're probably noticing that same thing on them, right? So then they get self-conscious and whatever. But she got furious about that and threw it right back in my face and was like, if I get to talk about my body however I want, and again, your feelings are not my problem, despite the fact that I have to be so incredibly conscious of anything that I might say about her, right? Of course. And it was just horrendous. It was almost like she wanted me to be like jealous that she was now like losing weight and whatever, knowing that like it would be really terrible for me to do what she was doing. Like, if I were working out twice a day, people around me should know that that's not okay. That's me going back to having exercise bulimia. But she could throw it in my face, talk about it all the time, and then say that I was being an awful person if I wasn't proud of her, right? Like, you should be happy for me, blah, blah, blah. That's always what it came back to. A similar weird thing that happened right in the beginning, just similar in the like, I know this, I want to see you hurt, was obviously, again, she knew too much about my history with narcissists and trust issues, and she, just like a couple weeks in of us dating, she had a friend in Chicago from California, and she mentioned that like this friend had been in her AA meetings out in California and had been like a really important part of her recovery. And so this person was always going to be in her life. And by the way, they've always had this sexual tension, but like they never really did anything about it. And then she left, like she wanted me to stay at her apartment. She thought it was the best thing ever if I would agree to like take a nap in her bed while she went to do this or anything. And then she could like come home to me. And she tried to spin it as like cute. But then this was just like, okay, I'm not going to fall asleep now that I know that you're spending time with someone that you have sexual tension with. We haven't even defined that we're actually together because it's so early on. And I don't know what this girl's, thing is, but it was odd. Like, who would do that? That's not a detail that I need to know. It's fine if it's a thing. Like, people have sexual tension with plenty of people in their lives, but they're not shady narcissists, right? So they just keep it to themselves and like don't act on it if they're with someone. And then she came back and like wanted to show me this like picture of her that this girl had posted on Instagram as proof that she'd gone to coffee, right? But it was like her just like laughing and having such a great time. And like, I'm sure her other ex in California, you know, liked it right away on Instagram because so much of her fucking fake life is all over Instagram. It's ridiculous. But yeah, that was like, she knew that I was going to feel awful. But again, I was supposed to be like, great, have an awesome time with your friend. Ugh. And again, what all of this brings me to is, like I've said a couple times, when they do the awful thing or they show you the thing that you wish you had, you're supposed to say how happy you are for them or how proud you are that they did this thing or whatever. And that, again, was part of the last conversation I ever had with her was, you know, she had come back from 3 weeks in, you know, on vacation. I haven't had a vacation since I was in high school. I'm 31. And so I was supposed to be so happy for her that like her parents had paid for her to go to fucking Hawaii for 3 weeks. I hadn't mentioned how I thought her tan was awesome. And so that was like the final straw. I hadn't said, I'm so happy that you have a tan or whatever. So anyway, that's that. I highly recommend you watching Sade Brown's channel, My Narcissistic Healing. It's super interesting. If you have anything that you would like to add to this, please just do it in the comments below. And thank you again for watching.